Hey, Wendy.
We have anybody else on?
Yes.
Uh-oh. Did you see he gave us a new thing?
New thing, I did all this work on the old.
I'm gonna give people another 2 or 3 minutes to get here, and then we'll get started. Maybe else keep like 20 tabs open at any given time.
Mhm.
This is just like a mess, because if I close it, I won't remember to do it.
Is this different from what we had?
Yes, the one that I gave you last week, you guys were at a 8.75 increase. That's down to a 7.2 increase in taxes.
Right direction.
So, and I'll go over some of the changes. Yeah, it's not nothing major, but
Yeah. Well, we can go over page by page, right?
I mean, if you want, yeah.
I'd like to.
Okay. Let me give it one more minute, y'all. Not anything official quite yet. Yeah, I'll change this. Okay, it is 5:35 on Monday, December 4th. I'd like to start this meeting of the Woodstock Village Board of Trustees to order. Tonight's agenda is, we're just going to be talking about the budget. We initially went over the budget last week in a joint meeting with the town select board. So tonight we're going to be going just through the village budget. There has been an update as of 2 hours ago that Eric can share with us. He's been working hard on tightening things up as much as he possibly can. So I would like to start with any citizen comments that there might be, not about the budget, but if there's anything else, because there's certainly gonna be time to talk. Are there any citizen comments? Wendy, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, Seton. This is indirectly about the budget in that it's a way to raise funds. I would like to know the trustees' thoughts on revisiting the 1% sales tax, local option tax that Jeffrey, maybe you can remember. It was not passed a few years ago. I asked Charlie, but I couldn't remember what year. But at any rate, that, and then second to that, revisiting the language and directives for the EDC so that we have some proactive measures as voters to consider as for funding resources beyond property tax. So just thoughts.
Yeah, and those are great thoughts. Both of those, I believe, those are both select board things. The 1% options tax that failed 2 years ago, I believe.
2 years ago, thanks.
Yeah, that was just through the town because we figured out through lawyers that it covered the town and the village, so it only was on the town ballot. So that would be a select board thing. And then the EDC, I think, reports directly to the select board, and so we don't have jurisdiction over them. Certainly, we'll take their money, but we don't have jurisdiction. Again, be a select board thing.
And is there a sense of momentum towards these ideas? This is a general question.
I mean, again, it's select
Sense.
board. We are always looking for, ways to raise revenue in a, an equitable
the
way.
village.
But
I'll tell you,
Okay.
one of, Wendy, I'll just comment that one of the reasons that didn't pass, standpoint of the business community, was that we're close to the border with New Hampshire.
Right.
If we raised the sales tax, that's what you're talking about?
Well, we had,
Yeah.
there are
If we raised
two,
this,
right,
if
yeah.
we raised the sales tax, we would not only we're already 6% versus 0, that would be 7% versus 0. We would have a higher sales tax than Massachusetts or New York. It would really put us in quite a high state tax. So I know that was one of the objections from the business.
Okay, are there any other citizen comments?
I don't see anything.
Okay, if not, let's move on to additions and deletions from the posted agenda. Does anybody have any additions, deletions?
I do not.
Okay, then we'll move on to the FY25 budget, and I'll turn it over to Eric.
Yeah, so before I start, I just want to again reference one of the biggest unknowns in the budget is the police contract between the village and the town. I know we are meeting tomorrow to continue that conversation, but just so everyone's clear that that's a large chunk of money. So until that's settled, the budget is going to be a little in flux. And when that number falls, we'll determine really how the budget is shaped at the end of the day. So I don't keep on saying that until we have a clear contract from there. So when we met on Wednesday night, I presented balanced budgets to the town budget and the village budget. The sewer budget, its own beast currently. Since then, I had a few hours today, so I went back through the budget. And by moving some things around, we'll talk about, I got the increased tax rate for the village to go from a projected 8.75 down to a 7.2. To do that, I increased a few revenue places, kind of to as high as I felt comfortable. But then going through the budget, I was able to catch a few redundancies and make a few more decisions to kind of decrease overall expenses. The large one was in years past, overtime was always kind of thrown into salaries. So that was never really counted as how much overtime was being spent. It's been my decision to kind of pull overtime out of that. So we actually track overtime as a budget item. So we know how much overtime we're actually accruing. Because of that number being out there, I felt comfortable decreasing some of the police salaries, knowing that there'll be an offset there. So that's where I was able to find some extra money to decrease.
Also, that was one of my questions, was the overtime at the police. We have a more full force now than we had.
Yep.
A year ago. That load should decrease over time.
Yeah, so what the number you see currently, which I believe is 40,000 on my new sheet I gave you. Yeah, so when I kind of did a quick estimate, I was around 55,000 for overtime. That 40,000 is a decrease from what it probably would have been.
That's right. The old one.
Yeah, here's the budget, and there's like a
Overtime, no, see, 37,500 is on this.
Yeah, I put up to
Yeah.
40 again after we found some extra money in the budget. Oh, what I'm saying is when I did the original budget, I had the overtime sitting around $55,000. I then decreased it based on hopefully being fully staffed.
So on this one, when we previously had it was 37,500. What is it now?
I have a 40,000.
So you raised it.
Yes,
So that's
because when I
an increase.
yeah, so originally when I did the budget, I projected around $55,000 for overtime. And then when the tax rate was so high, I was trying to find places to cut. So I put that down to 37.5. And then going through today, when I found some savings that was cut some other money, I felt it was prudent to increase overtime as a safety precaution. Because when the tax rate was, 10%, I was really trying to make it somewhat reasonable. I was cutting wherever I could. So as I found money today, as I cut, I was also trying to find places where I thought we could use money to be safe. The issue with overtime, especially with police, is even if we're fully staffed, you can't really come for overtime because there's accidents, arrests, investigations, that can kind of crop up. And so it's very hard to say, just because we're fully staffed doesn't mean we won't have overtime just based on what's happening, you know, in the town or village.
I have a question about the audit. Auditing expense, 15,400.
Yep.
Is that something that we are contracted to pay every year?
So if you remember, so two things. One, the municipality has to do an audit every year.
Yeah.
Last year we voted to get rid of the internal audits we had because we
Yeah.
always hired outside. So that 15,004 is the village portion of the audits. So it's done every year.
So that can't be changed.
No, I mean, in theory, we could try to find a cheaper auditor than we currently use. And then number, you know, potentially could change, or if they offered, you know, a 3-year contract or something, but we probably want to go for bid if we're gonna sign anything long term.
Could we go page by page?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one we originally had.
Yeah.
Point out the differences. Okay. Just to do it in order.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we start at the very top, the first line is grants and trusts. So this is all level funded from the previous years. The audit expense is for the trust funds. The trustees public fund wages for the people who work for the Woodstock Trust that we pay. And then that may be able to get on the $200. I think we voted to not pay Jill Davies this year, but I want to double check that.
That was her decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't.
So I'll make a note that, because that could be $200. Then seasonal decorations, 3,000, which is kind of at where it's been over the past few years.
Go to these guys candy.
I would have to look to give you the exact thing, but I think anything seasonal, then if we have any extra money for
The
use for it.
lights with the Christmas trees and
Yeah,
around the
yeah,
green.
yeah. Looking next at the trustees, that's level funded again from the previous year. Bill. So two things on here. One is legal services last year was not used a lot. I'm not sure why. I know we had stuff in the village for legal services. I'm not sure if it was just allocated incorrectly between the town and the village. I did actually receive today a letter from the lawyers we normally use. They're increasing their fees for the first time since 2020. So I don't feel confident moving that number. And then the village insurance number currently is probably lower than where it should be. We're projecting a potential $40,000 to $48,000 increase in the insurance UVLCT this year.
48,000.
48,000.
What?
Yeah.
That's split between town and village.
And yeah, and sewer. So we got the first bill that's due in January, which is $98,000, and typically per quarter, they're about $86,000 last year.
So does this number need to be high?
So I increased the town side a little bit more. I have not increased this yet because I know where the village is not in a good position for.
Anything? Yeah.
So I want to do more research into that number. Sometimes you do get credits throughout the year, and that's something I'm hoping for as well. And the only big difference is, obviously last year we had the police chief search. So there was extra costs in that budget last year. We did not have it this year, or we're not projecting to have another one next year.
Better not.
So that's there. Executive, there was no changes to the last one you had here. This is just myself and Nikki Nurse on that line. With again, overtime kind of split out from before, then overtime will be split between town, village, and sewer. Employee benefits, so full-time salaries, Nikki's a union member, so she moves up a step each year, so that's her increase there. my increase is projected at 3%, which was happened last year. But again, my COLA increase is tied to the department head increases, which typically has been 3% over the last few years. That's why the number is there. Employee benefits, we're projecting about a 7 to 7.5% increase this year. Just looking at the family insurance plan today, it's about an 8% increase for the family plan from to this year. That's where that increase comes from.
Question just below that,
Yep.
professional development, $1,000, nothing in fiscal year 24.
Yep, so that is kind of a new line I have for professional development and meetings for myself. I think currently ICMA, which is in my contract to be, is about $1,000 for the membership, $800. And the conference usually runs another $1,000, if not more, to attend if I attend that. So that kind of takes away the whole budget. If I just do that, that leaves no room for Nikki to do any professional development for HR or other conferences or things that I may feel worthy to attend. So that is it is a new one, but it's just, I think, something that's been probably underfunded for a few years.
Thank
Can
you.
I say something before we go forward? I really have an issue with the Woodstock Elementary School parking lot fee.
Mhm.
I really think that we need to take a look at that and figure out, because we can only use it on weekends.
And all summer.
And all summer.
Right, but I've never really seen many people use it. Have you?
I've never seen it, well, full, except rare occasions, but yeah, people use
I
it.
mean, we certainly can do more promotion.
Also,
I mean,
what's the contract?
that's what we said in the contract when we sat down with the
Right. But
I don't have it in front of me, but
Yeah.
I'll have to pull it, yeah.
Can't remember what the term.
I just have an issue with that.
Yeah.
personally.
Well, I mean, if we need to work to get more people to use it, certainly. There's always requests for more parking.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
Maybe,
I think it should be free,
right,
during those times when it's not being used. We paid for it to be paved a long time ago, when it wasn't paved at all. The first time it was paved, we paid. That's why it should be free.
and
But
that,
it has
and
since
that
been
was,
repaved by the school.
Then they repaved it now.
Yeah.
right, because they said
Yes.
it needed repair and maintenance,
Yeah,
right?
yes.
I have an issue with that.
So
And any change in that would have to be discussed with the
Yeah.
school district.
Yep.
I
Okay.
think this is one of the things where going through this is good because we have these questions.
Mhm.
As my understanding, we have a contract with them currently. So to break that contract would, I don't think they'd sue us, but at the same time, you don't want to strange thing.
No.
Okay, so we're up to office administration.
Yes.
Okay, why are the operating supplies going up?
So what has happened in the past, and I'm not sure why this was the case, is typically everything split 60-40 between the village and the town. That's usually the allocation we use. For office administration, it was not, it was a flat number. So this reallocates the costs 60-40 between the town and the village when it comes to office administration stuff. So that's kind of the difference you see from the previous year.
Well, say, I didn't follow that.
So usually most things are split 60-40 when it comes to village and town.
Right, previous year, how was it done?
It was just a flat number, so it was 1,200 instead of 1,750 or whatever. I'm not sure where that number came from. So this budget tries to put it back to 60-40.
Huh.
What line are you in?
Office administration. Office administration, operating supplies.
Oh,
In general, okay, all right. Fine, so that's due to 60-40.
Yeah, so I mean, this is, so there is one change to this, I'll get in a second, but everything else is level funded from FY24, just the allocation is different. So for example, operating supplies has typically been $7,000. And in years past,
Well, we almost, FY23, we were not far off from that amount anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not. It's not unreasonable number either.
But why, I wonder why it was huge. Yeah, why it went down so much in 24.
My guess is it's probably a little funded from previous years, and they just never, at one point, that could have been the correct allocation. And then when they increased it, they never moved it over.
Why is what's machinery and equipment for, where I don't see a previous line for it? Amount for it. $500.
Yep, so that was typically, let me just confirm this on road. Again, $2,000 that has been usually allocated just all to the town. So this allocation moves some of it to the village as well. Machinery equipment could be printers, laptops, scanners, anything for the machine equipment inside town hall or in other departments.
And we've got a question. Wendy, did you have a question about this section of the budget? You're on mute.
Thank you, Seaton. I just wanted to comment on Brenda's point about the parking at the Woodstock Elementary. I am aware, this is one weekend a year, the art festival on the green. The chamber asks or directs all visiting vendors, just artists, to park in that parking lot. She makes that available to those artists so that we're not parked around the green. So I'm just for your, it's an anecdote to share that I'm aware of one way it gets used, because that's a weekend show.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thanks,
Yep.
Wendy.
So something like this,
Yeah.
it's just $500. If we've never had that in our budget, isn't that possible that we could take that out of our budget?
I mean, you can do whatever you want, it's your budget, you'll approve it at the end of the day. What I tried to do was try to use these funds to properly allocate things the way we've been doing in the past, which is a 60-40 split. You know,
Except the way we've been doing things in the past is zero.
but I mean, if you think of a laptop that I buy for myself, or a computer for Nikki, or a scanner for Corey, I mean, some of that work are allocated to the village work as well. That's why they're in there.
What's the total difference? If we're looking at 60-40 split here, because you applied that, which makes sense. But what would in actual numbers have been if you hadn't done that? Is there a way of telling that?
Looking quickly,
I mean, are we
Going
winning
line
or
by line,
losing?
we're going line.
I know, but Jeffrey's
yeah,
objective.
like, if you give me 2 seconds, I can tell you.
So specifically office administration.
Yeah, so it actually comes out as a negative because I decreased the NEMRIC support from $1,250 to $562. Equipment maintenance went from 1,000 to 750. Postage stayed the same. Office supplies went down $25.
So it's kind of a wash, is what you're saying. I mean, negative a little bit.
Yeah, and I mean,
Helps us.
and we're talking about $500, $50.
Yeah.
The difference is negligible overall. Yeah.
Understood.
Okay, so let's move along. Talk about the IT contract.
Yep, so if the boards remember, this past year, we entered a contract with Hanover. So in the past, IT services have never been budgeted for in any budget in Woodstock. What happened was money came out of account lines like equipment maintenance, machine equipment, communications. If you look at office administration, the communication line from FY23 is $5,283. We budgeted $1,800. The vast majority of that is going to be from payment for the contract we used at the time for IT services. And if you go through the whole budget, most communication lines are going to be over budget because we were spending $30,000 to $40,000, sometimes $20,000 on IT services that were never budgeted for. So this actually creates a line to show the contract, which is $2,000 a month. that will actually budget for, and that's where the money will come, so we won't be overspent on other lines.
And we get our 40% of that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's,
The $1,000 for our operating supplies is a new line, for town and village, and sewer. And that's because as we have Hanover in looking at stuff, they're making recommendations, they're changing things out. We had something break about a month ago that they came in and fixed for us. So that kind of allows us some room. So if there are changes to make, we can make them. And if we don't need to spend that money on something to upgrade, we can put into having new computers eventually or something like that. So it gives us some room for IT upgrades.
just Hanover, they're just two towns working together.
Yeah, so we signed a contract with the town of Hanover, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
So their IT department is now providing our services. Yeah.
So we're sharing the same service.
Yes, basically, yeah. And as you say that, I know the trustees asked to have them come speak, so we can set that up whenever. Now that they've been here for a little while, I think they probably speak more intelligently on what they've seen and what they've done. So it might be a good time to have them in relatively soon.
I'm going in no order.
Go in order.
I'm really thrilled to see that the manager's search is there.
Better be zero.
That's,
Yeah, so that's zero now, hopefully for the foreseeable future. Auditing expenses stay the same as previous year. Treasurer, you'll see that the benefits have gone away. That's because talking to the VLCT, it's a stipend. Therefore, benefits will not be associated with it with a stipend. So you see the $100 difference right there. Accountants,
part-time salary.
yep. So again, all the salaries used to be thrown into full-time salaries. Her title, right? I believe it's account assistant, but Patricia is a part-time salary. So I just took that out of full-time salaries. So it is, so you can kind of track it better to do it the way it is. So again, the full-time salaries is going to be a finance instructor, our accounts receivable, split again between town, village, and
But
sewer.
on the left-hand side, for 23 and 24, you took a 32 and 35 full-time, and you said that part-time was included in that.
Mhm.
So that's still the same figure, and then a separate one for part-time full out is quite an increase.
It's over 40.
Yeah, so again, I'm not sure if that $32,000. I want to check to make sure that is correct. The budget for FY24 is $35,000.
Which included part-time salary.
Yes. So you're looking at an increase of about $7,000. Again, that's going to be 3% increase for the finance director, 3% increase for the accounts receivable, and then a 3% increase for the account assistant as well.
Is Nikki union though?
So this is not Nikki, but it's Corey and Patricia, and
They're not
they're both in the union. Yeah.
It doesn't add up. 3%.
I will double check the numbers. When we have another conversation break, I'll pull it up. Just to confirm.
Thanks.
Yep. And then you'll see again, trying to split things and look at things in a different way. It doesn't make you mad, Jeffrey, but you see line 93, it's $6.25. And that's just trying to allocate things. I'm sure we can get rid of that, but that was kind of just looking at things to show, what the allocation should be. But again, if you look at operating expenses for last year, $4,025, this year, $3,193. So sometimes the allocation also works in your favor. Village clerk stays the same. And if you go down the plan zoning, Similar, you have, 2 employees, split between town and village. You have the planning and zoning director, which in budget for 3% increase. Then the planning and zoning assistant, union member, so that's 3% increase as well on top of that. Again, trying to spread out the overtime. So planning and zoning, I think oversee 7 boards, majority of them being night meetings. We do try to not kill employees, so we don't have her attend all the meetings. But when her assistance is required, she does go to the meeting. So this, again, trying to break up the overtime, show us where the money's coming from. Then again, you look at his operating expenses, a few small increases for equipment and travel. Again, this is just travel expenses is similar to mine, the opportunity for professional development, not only for him, but for his staff. We hired someone this past summer, they're doing a great job. And we want to encourage that person to stay with us and grow and develop. And some of Plan and Zoning's long-term goals, this person could help make those happen by continuing to take classes and improve. So again, it's a short-term cost for the town, but hopefully a long-term savings, everything works out.
Is that, I'm sorry, is that dues of meetings? Which line?
So talking about travel and transportation and equipment purchases. Yeah. So the next one is the dues, and that big increase, as we talked about on Wednesday, one of the few asks I kept in the budget from the department heads was a short-term rental software that was requested by Plan and Zoning. Again, this is about a $28,000 software program that by purchasing this, regardless of what happens in the background, it'll allow us to regulate short-term rentals better in Woodstock. The added benefit of this is if we do fund it and use it, and simultaneously the planning commission comes back with the recommendations for changes to short-term rentals, and the board approves it, there's a potential for a dramatic increase in revenue based off of that, which could be up to $100,000 potentially. Again, as we discussed before, I'm not advocating the budget for it just because we're still months away before it becoming public to the boards. So the last thing we want to do is project revenue that will never come in. So the hope is we fund this, the changes go through, and we're sitting here next year saying we have $80,000 of new revenue, and with that $80,000, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and that $80,000 going forward can now be part of revenue. We can try to decrease the tax base or fund more things.
So you're saying the 15,760 is that 40% of?
Of the cost, yeah. So that's, so his normal line was about $5,000. You look over another 24 budget. So it's really about $10,000 that the village will pay for the software.
I guess I'm trying to understand what is going to be the benefit of spending that $28,000 to monitor short-term rental? How going forward are we going to be able to recover our money on that?
So if we can go out and find people who are not following our guidelines, we can charge them the fees that they need to be charged for being registered as a short-term rental, then the permits year after year. But the real thing is if we have the software and the changes get made throughout the planning commission, the increase to have I won't get ahead of them, but there's a potential that they'll charge more for Airbnbs, which would then bring more revenue into the
Charge
Smithville.
more for Airbnbs as far as like the registration fee?
Potentially, I don't want to get into, I'm not involved in conversations yet, but what my conversations with the plan zoning and so on planning commission is that they're cautiously optimistic that if these things pass, the town and village will see a significant revenue increase based off of them. Now, the trustees can vote against that ruling comes up. The planning commission could not follow it. Town can vote against it, so we have a long way to go before that comes. But if I'm taking one risk in this budget, it's funding $20,000 with the hope that next year from now we have more revenue to play with. And if we don't, we fund it for $28,000. you know, it didn't work out, maybe more people in to require them to follow the right rules. And so that's kind of what it looks like.
Significant penalty dollars involved in the ordinance that the trustees passed.
Yeah.
That would have to be enforced.
Yeah, so one of them is enforcement, and one of them also is finding the people who do Airbnbs who aren't registered that we don't know about. And if the hope is that you reach out to some of them, they'll just follow the rules out of, you know, being a good citizen. The enforcement part is the harder part, and again, that's why I'm not asking for any revenue to be projected off of it, because
You don't know yet.
we don't know what's gonna happen, but like even if all these things work out and then no one wants to follow the rules and we don't feel like bringing 50 people to court over $5,000, you know, then the revenue won't be there. But I think at minimum, the software will show us and help get people in line with the regulations they should be following. So we
You
don't
have
have to enforce
actual
it.
numbers to work with,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, we think we have this many.
So right now, the way we find out what Airbnbs is our fire chief creates a fake email account, goes onto all their software programs once a year and like sends them emails. And if they respond that they're in Woodstock, then he knows they're doing Airbnb. That's how we got our counts, which is not a very scientific way to do it. That's the way we currently do it. This software will hopefully just say, here are the 100 Airbnbs in Woodstock. We can cross-reference with who has asked for a permit, and then find the ones who haven't, and reach out to them and say, hey, maybe you don't know, we have to follow these rules, and hopefully they sign up. And then if there are changes down the road, then that'll be an increase in revenue there as well.
The software tracks,
There are literally people that sit there and go through everything every single day. I only know this because I talked to the guy.
does it track Instagram,
No, it tracks it tracks,
the commercial companies that
yeah,
track? So
Airbnb, VRBO.
Well,
Yeah.
there's all wherever they post it, I imagine, the,
Yeah.
typically what they're looking at.
But if you're,
I can send you a link.
if you're interested, we can also look to see if Instagram or other things they follow as well, because they may do.
It's
I
just a
think
lot of money to spend,
I know, I'm just saying, there's
$28,000.
so many ways, right?
Yeah,
well, and that's something you can, I can send you the link so you can see exactly what they do.
and if this is one of the budget items that the board's not ready to, I mean, we have a long way to go before, you know, it happens, but we can also bring in plan and zoning and or the plan commission to speak more intelligently about the software than I can. So that's also an option as well, if there's hesitation on that issue.
My hesitation is we spend this $10,000 on it, and we don't have that power or the time or something to make anything of it.
Yeah.
Other than a paper report. That would not be a good way to go forward, unless we have that in line, both enforcement and someone who has the time to contact all those people that come out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a question that enforcement's always a question we have to look at, because we don't have anyone really allocated to do that. And the fire chief is the current person to do that, and his job is busy enough without going door to door. Having said that, I think there is this assumption that if you reach out to people who aren't doing it, most people will then follow the rules and sign up. And so the increase in people signing up should at least offset the cost of this. And then anything you get above that be more beneficial. On top of that, again, if the process that the planning commission is going through comes to fruition and becomes a law or ordinance in Woodstock, the increase in revenue could be significant. That would far overshadow the $28,000 or the $10,000 to $12,000 that the trustees would allocate for it. Bill, do you have a question?
No, I'm just trying to make sure I'm looking at the right line. I'm looking at dues, subs, meetings. Is in that line?
Yeah, it's line was 119.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers. I just have. That's okay. So it's the 27,000 is them, and your figure was 15,760, and that's roughly 10,000 more than the 4960 we had last year.
Yeah, so plan and zoning asked for more than one software, so that's where you see the $27,000. They asked for also permanent software as well.
Makes sense.
It's my recommendation for the board to go with the short-term rental for the again, getting people in line with our ordinance. We have ordinances set up, we have rules set up. This is a way to encourage people to actually follow the rules.
It's been a problem for a while, so I understand, right?
For us, as Stephen said, for us to know who is actually out there and have a real number of how many Airbnbs are in Woodstock. And then the knock-on effect is that it could have more revenue down the road for us as well. But then going on, everything else and plan zoning is level funded. I actually, yeah, so I decreased the department requests for the village plan from 1,500 back down to 1,200, which is level funded from FY24.
What?
That is to consultant help with the village plan, yeah, 2%, yeah. So I mentioned this in the email earlier today. I knocked down the contingency from 15 to 10. I don't love that, but again, trying to keep the tax rate somewhere reasonable. And if we have a budget that actually reflects what the village costs with the allocations and overtime, hopefully we could make do with 10,000 in contingency instead of 15,000. So that's where you see the decrease there.
What should we actually spend?
There's money in there.
No, I don't think that was the zeros incorrect, but not a lot last year. But also,
That's where Candy came from.
No, that came from, no, that ended up coming from, decorations. So holiday
Oh,
stuff.
so.
so to be,
Remember what we used.
when I came on, it was unclear if this trustees had a contingency budget or not, and so I think a lot of things that might have went to that were not allocated there because there's a thought internally that was not in the budget until found in the budget. So I think for the first 8 months of the year, that $15,000 was not known to be there, so it was never used or never asked to be used.
Yeah, because last year was the first time we had a contingency.
Yeah.
I think one of our ideas was to have that get built up as well, so that if we don't use it this year, we can use it.
Is there a current balance?
That's what I'm wondering. If we use it.
So for this year, so far, it's only the porta parties for full year
Okay.
season, yeah,
Yeah.
which is about $900.
$500.
Yeah.
Well, we're about to do that again this weekend.
Yes,
But it's more than that now. I'll have to look at it.
and also the trustees voted for myself and Mark Hunter for the stipend after the flood
that's
as
right.
well.
So that was $2,000.
1,000 each, right? Wasn't,
Yeah.
yeah, so one for the trustees and, yeah.
So it just needs to be on the line.
It'll
And
be
then we've
about
got some funds
3,000
left.
by the time we're caught up.
Yeah, I mean, I think just right now, we came to the $3,000, $4,000, just talking about what we've spent so far out of that
Right.
fund. Yeah. Then again, unused sick time. I would love to build up capital. I think that's some of them underfunded in Woodstock. But again, trying to find ways to keep the tax rate relatively low and not having a large increase. We currently look at the village staff. There's only a few who have a large payout if they were to leave. It's my understanding that the ones are not retiring in the next year. Therefore, I felt somewhat confident decreasing that to $10,000. We do have but somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 right now sitting in that account. We have not transferred what we paid the former chief out when he left into that account. We're trying to swallow it with our current budget to save that money for other things. That's where the money would go. Tree.
Was
Yep.
it- Eric, was that changed? Didn't we, people were grandfathered to be able to use their unused sick when they retire,
So
right?
there's two things on this. Yeah. So one is the town village voted some cutoff. I want to say it's like July 11th of 2020, whatever. So if you were an employee before that, your sick time was paid out when you left.
Right.
The municipalities had to change that rule, and so now sick time is not paid out when you left. But for people who had built that sick time up beforehand, they currently have that
Grandfather.
grandfathered in. But there's also like vacation time or everything else. So if I was to leave tomorrow, my vacation will be paid out to me. That's never budgeted in any budget. So
Yeah.
this is also where we take that money from as well.
Oh, so it's unused sick and vacation time.
Technically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was unused sick to, because we knew that was happening.
Yeah.
But, we don't make a difference. Tree funds, the $5,000, same as last year. And I talked to the tree warden, who I think we reelected again this year.
Yeah.
And, he gave me a budget for $40,000. So I mean, the money will be well spent if, we so choose to. So I actually have, so the one place where we could talk about, some cuts tonight if you want to. The highway aid to the town, is budgeted at,
Before you get there.
Yep.
Extend parking,
oh, sorry, yes.
that should be zero. Knock the $1,000 out. That was what we paid for the use of the Sunset Farm.
Okay.
which Pentangle would pay back to us, and then changed around where Pentangle has to deal directly with them now.
Perfect.
So that should be a $1,000 reduction.
I was actually gonna say, like, if we're paying them $1,000 and 4,000 to the school, that doesn't seem to really,
And there's
Make
no
a lot
need
of
to use
sense.
this one.
yeah, but you know what I'm saying?
The school.
So the highway aid to the town, the village has typically allocated $49,000 to that. The town usually allocates $46,000 in revenue. I'm not sure why there's a difference between that, if that was just a mistake or not.
Hmm.
I just found that out like 45 minutes ago, so I'm gonna look into that. So if it can be 46,000 instead of 49, or if it should be 49 and just hasn't been that way. So that potentially a $3,000 savings, but I'll,
And
once
that's
I,
just what we pay them to maintain our roads.
Yeah.
A little bit.
saying, sorry?
I said that would help a little bit.
So the meat of the village budget is obviously the police department. So if you're looking, the first line is, the police chief and his admin assistant. Admin assistant is in the union. The police chief, has a contract, I believe it's an indefinite contract, but, again, department head, so a 3% increase is, projected there. Training and stipends, that's for both the police chief and, the admin assistant, local residency, and stuff like that. Paid benefits, again, we're projecting 7.5% increase in that. Law enforcement wages, so this is, the sergeant, all the full-time officers, and then also projected salaries for part-time officers, as well. And then below that, all the local, stipends as well, which again is contractual, based on the union contract and or the personnel policy. Overtime, Jeffrey, we talked about this briefly before.
Before you
Yeah.
go further, that's in this union contract, you said, local EMT and education stipend.
Mhm.
But look how much it was in fiscal year 24.
What the actual was in fiscal year 23.
Year 17,
12,000 was
Yeah.
way too low.
that was too low, and 17 was actually, so why did we do 12
I don't know.
if it was 17?
I don't know why it could have been, trying to think of 23, so we hired a few new officers and they have lived locally and the ones before them did not. So what we do is when we budget for, we shouldn't do this, but in order to save money, we budget for the person in that slot, right? We don't budget for the worst case scenario, which would be allocate every single stipend to that position just in case. So if you have someone sitting there, a great example is, okay, benefits. We have someone there who's a single person, benefits for themselves, that person leaves, and we replace him or her with someone who has a family plan. and because they have a wife or husband, kids, that benefits then shoots up because we don't, which is to save money, we budget. Seaton has a single plan, Jeffrey's a family plan. The safest way to do it would be say, what's the most this position could actually cost? We'll budget that. We don't do that. So the stipends you see here, the 19,000, is for the people currently in the police department, what we'll pay them in stipends. So if one of them was to leave or replace them with someone who didn't live in Woodstock, with someone who did live in Woodstock, then we have to pay them more because it'd be the residency stipend.
They were military and all the.
Military, yeah, or their master's degree in the military and this and that. So that's kind of why that thing will change year over year.
Okay, and that's based on our current force, pretty much,
Yes,
and what their contract demands.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the chief keeps track of all this, so they know some of the budget specifically, which officers getting which.
yeah, so it's the police chief, and then it's also our HR and payroll as
So
well.
I sign off on every week. I see
Yeah, you see stipends in there involved there, yeah.
stipends going through.
So again, so some confusion on overtime. So when I was doing the calculations, I projected somewhere between $50,000 and $55,000 of overtime. When I was trying to cut the budget to keep tax rates low, I moved it to 37.5. As I was going through today and making other cuts and finding new revenue and blah, 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 I had some extra money. So I put overtime back up to $40,000 as somewhere where maybe that's where we end up. But that's why that number is different from what you had 5-6 days ago.
And there was nothing prior. I'm not sure why. It was a new line item.
Yep.
or-
So this is the first time I think in a few years at least where we're splitting overtime out from full-time salaries. So full-time salaries now should just be what a single employee makes over 40 hours that week, and overtime will be what anyone makes in overtime. That way we can kind of track what we're actually spending in overtime and why we're spending that. So if you think of our overtime that would have been after the July flooding, right? Obviously been very, very high because of that. So you track how much that actually was or something like that. Or, in a case where you're short staffed, your salary line will be lower and your overtime will be higher because of they're making up the difference. The only real big thing that I think will jump out at anyone else in the top line of salaries of police is the training salaries and benefits. And what that is as you have seen, we have a pretty young department currently. And so this is to allow them to go to the academy and to get other training to kind of give them the fresh development they need to be fully officers and have all the training they would need to be the best officers possible. So that's why you see the increase. It should just be a 1-year increase to get them all fully up to speed. I will say, talking to Chief Swanson, it's been very difficult to get officers these days in Vermont the training they need just due to staffing and the way it's set up. So some of this may move around. If he can get people in earlier, he's going to try to get people in earlier. If they'd be pushed out, to be pushed out. But it's very difficult with staffing on the Vermont state side to get people prior for training. And then this training that the chief can do, but because he's also the direct supervisor, he can't provide that training because it would then seem, he could be given his own people, some help there. And I think, that's it for any differences, I think, in the salary line for police. So the other thing we'll see, town police salaries, town police stipend, those are both empty. And the reason why is you'll see that up top in law enforcement salaries and wages and local EMT education stipends. It's easier when we're doing the budget to have all the officers in one place than separate them out. So once this budget is locked, we can then allocate that money so that budget lines will go back to where it was. So line 169 will, decrease by $70,000, and that $70,000 will sit there or something like that. So that's why you see the difference there. But overall, you're looking at about a $40,000 increase and salary lines from FY '24. Which again, you're thinking about benefits and salaries going up 3 to 4% on each person. So that's why you see the increase there. Going through, you see marginal increases on administration line, office supplies up $25, operating supplies up 150, buying up 100, transportation and transport up 150, dues inscriptions up 600, advertising down 200. But if you actually look at the FY '23 actuals compared to FY '25 budgeted, that's still about 17,000 less. About 2,000 less than was actually spent in FY '23.
I mean, are these real numbers then? I mean,
That he's asking for.
yeah, I mean, how can you be asking for so much less for things that,
I think, to be honest, I think
I mean, can he reasonably do this? It's my, like, if things cost what they cost. I mean, is he cutting something out? Is he not going to some, is he cutting back on?
only thing
Membership
that the only thing that's in this contract operating wise for the police that's really different is the TASER contract.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the chief was trying to, knowing that contract exists, trying to find cuts otherwhere to
Okay.
offset the overall cost. But I believe at the end of the day, his operating expenses have actually decreased from last year. I think that was a way to try to show the board that he is trying to be as fiscally conservative as possible. I don't think any department heads can say no if the trustees want to add more money to the budget. That's a decision the board can make.
If he can, I mean, if he can operate with it, that's fine. I don't want them to go about things that are necessary.
You explain contract services.
Yeah, so that is, for example, there's a wedding at the inn. So then they have to have a police officer there due to stuff that happened before me. So the wedding people, the inn will pay to have the officer there. So when they go to that event, instead of paying that out of their normal salary line, that's paid out of contract services. Revenue side for contract, and when they get paid for that, that comes in as a new set of revenue on the revenue side for the trustees.
Okay, that was my question.
And
That's not, okay,
So it balances out.
yeah, so,
it actually should be a little more revenue. So if it costs, let's say, $200 to have the officer there, we will charge them like $225 or $230, and that extra money comes in as revenue for the admin costs associated with that officer being there.
okay, so unlike the other things that are in this line, because that's balanced out, doesn't that skew the budget figure?
So it doesn't balance out. So let me just, let me try the right number for you as we talk. So
There's no line at all for 2020.
yeah, so where I should say I'm projecting $27,000 in revenue for police contracts to come in to the village, with $10,000 going out as expenses. So we could get rid of that money and then just allocate $17,000 as revenue. But we know we're gonna spend some money on contracted services when officers go out. We just don't know how many, because we don't know how many events there'll be. So it's very hard to budget how much it's gonna cost, because
Yeah.
there could be,
But I'm just missing that, your 7.2%
yeah,
includes $10,000,
yes,
but yet it shouldn't.
but we're gonna spend that money.
But it's more than covered.
Yeah, but so the revenue I'm projecting is $27,000, right? That is, part of that $27,000 is a $10,000 that we'll spend. So if you got rid of $10,000 of expenses, we would decrease the revenue $10,000 as well. Because some of that revenue is gonna be the money to pay for the officer going out there. So we could get rid of $10,000 and we just decrease the revenue from $27,000 down to $17,000. It's the same thing. It's just having the money there acknowledges that we will spend money out of that line. So when we're here next November and you look at the finance report, you say, why is $6,000 charged to contract services with no budgets? This way we know there's a budget there. I think your answer is, or your question is, what if we don't spend up to $10,000? Then we allocate money that's, you know, we didn't need to spend, but then also revenue would be down. So it kind of offset that there as well. So I think the question is, we can get rid of that and we'll just decrease the revenue expectation and the tax rate will stay the same.
Okay. It seems like it's odd. It seems like it's the only thing in the budget that we're looking at tonight that has that revenue component.
Well, and you look at FY '23, we spent $25,000 in contract services going out, based on what I have in front of me.
Oh, yeah, I know, I see that. It's just a little confusing, that, how that works with the, but there's no revenue component that's on this paper, so.
There is in the back, yeah, I mean, that, and then in the sheet, there's, yeah, there's revenue. I know,
In the village budget side?
at the very end, so let me, and I gotta tell you,
Okay, I don't want to jump in, but I know we're following the routine, so.
but so just, going over the last 3 or 4 years, we brought in 60,800 in police contract revenue, then about $37,000, then $27,000, and then $27,000. So the $27,000 is the average of revenue that comes in with these contracts. So last year, but we also spent some money as well in there.
Okay, so. So I guess there's just no revenue component on this budget sheet,
No, when you're looking at it, it's just expenses.
just
Yeah.
expenses.
So the packet you got Wednesday had the revenue at the far back. And fuel.
See that?
Yeah, I know that one's on there too. Okay. All right.
So if we go down again, the only real big difference you'll see is the TASER contract, which Chief Bush signed last year for new TASERs for the officers. That also comes with training, virtual training as well. The hope is that that will offset with some training we want to pay for, but we haven't seen that savings yet. So we're hoping to have that this year.
What about the old taser? So there's this thing as.
You recycled them. Can you get money for them?
Yeah,
I'll look into it.
Trade-in value.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was part of the contract or not, but I'll look into if they trade those in or not. I know Robbie, before he left, was looking at, I forget the company, but basically they come in and they can look at your equipment and they'll sell it. And like,
Oh, yeah.
take
Yeah, he started doing
a
that.
percentage of the sale for themselves and then a percentage for the police. So I want to go for the different tasers.
okay.
Travel and tuition, about the same. Communications,
What's an Exxon body? Oh, is that the camera?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just was wondering, that's what that meant.
So good, if you look at, under police communications, you have dispatch services, radio maintenance, communications. You'll see I decreased that by a couple $1,000. That's on the assumption that some of those communication costs were originally IT costs. So with having the IT contract, those costs should not be there. So that's the hope right there. So that's where you'll see some of that, the offsetting savings. Parking meetings, supplies, down about $1,000 from last year budgeted. Again, just trying to look at ways to save money. With the equipment purchase being the big decrease from 2,000 to 1,050. Everything else same or less the same. Police vehicles, no real changes there. For the maintenance, no changes. And then again,
The T fuel.
that'd be the town fuel, and that should be allocated up top as well.
Oh, okay, that just gets
Yeah.
mixed in with others.
And then, capital reserves, the only change is $25,000 for the police cruiser, which, we kind of knew about when the board, voted to, approve the purchase of the vehicles. And that was, Chief Swanson showed you kind of the breakdown of how it'll look over a few years.
All person.
Yep.
Is there any value in trying to combine the office supplies and some of the little things with the office here? I guess it's like a separate company, unless they're dealing with their own printing costs and photocopies and supplies, pencils, whatever.
Um,
I mean, I mean, it's okay. I just wondered if there's any value in trying to combine whatever the town's.
they,
Paying 100% of this as a town, right? Police funds. There's no split with the, the village, I'm sorry.
so the village is paying the full amount of it, but you also do receive the revenue from the town, of $450,000, give or take, that'll, go towards the cost of the police department.
Right.
There,
The county letter.
I don't know, I'd have to look into it because my assumption is a lot of the office supplies that are probably bought by the police department might be specific to the police department. More so like, the stuff for parking meters, things like that, ticket books, et cetera, things that we don't need, I'm not sure how much post-it notes, pens, pencils,
It's a small amount, it's not worth. talking
paper
about.
we look at, yeah. There's more questions on that. We can also go look at the revenue. Yep.
What is, these need quotes, tasers? I thought, we already covered the new tasers.
So those things that he has not asked for yet, so they're not gonna be in the budget. So I think those might be a placeholder. But as of right now, he hasn't supplied anything, so that we won't consider anything. Yeah.
All right. So tonight, besides what you've changed $1,000. That's it.
Yes, and now we're down to 7.1%.
All right. How do we get to 6.9?
You're careful.
I'm serious.
I mean,
I want to get under 7.
Inflation, I don't think we can.
I think we
We do?
So I mean, it's just gonna be cuts in services. You're probably looking at cutting, at least 2 to 3. Let me just say what you would have to do.
Well, I mean, it's something to remember, and I don't know if this falls on us or the town, but we knew last year we had to increase, and we've talked about this year, increasing the trash pickup during busy times. And now we've got the 4 that we have to pay for. I don't know if that's something that the town has to deal with or that.
I mean, so, yes
We
and
talked
no.
about like
Yeah.
one more trash pickup, but then there's conversation about, we want police officers to stand places and be more, like, all those, just and some of this can be done without more money, but trash pickup, especially when we have to call in Casella an extra how many ever times during the fall and wassail, and I mean, that's something that was said at the EDC meeting, that I understand, but that's
Yeah.
gonna cost money, so do we need
So-
to do that?
So I think, when I presented this budget last week, I was, I think, pretty clear that I thought the budget was tight and that more money should be allocated to the budget. Understanding the constraints on taxpayers and not wanting to, I think one of my goals is to encourage more people to move into Woodstock, and especially lower income and middle class people, and not try to scare them out of Woodstock. So I don't want to be raising tax rates higher than they need to be. But I think I spent a lot of time on the village budget, and there's not a lot to do with it because your tax revenue is so limited. You're looking at $692,000 right now. You know, to fund $20,000 more, you're talking about a pretty substantial hike in the tax rates. So, and cutting's the same way, you know, there's not a lot of fat on this budget to cut. I mean, the police department decreased their operating supplies. You know, their main requests are contractual salaries. You know, I think the only real thing on here is planning and zoning, which is a new thing, but that has the potential to bring the road and also keep people following the guidelines that the trustees have set out when it comes to short-term rentals. So it's a tool to kind of help legislate what the board wants. You know, I think I can look into the highway. If we cut that $3,000, that'll get us under 7%. And that could be a conversation I have with the town as well.
That's like.
That'll give you 6.9 around this,
that would
6.8.
get- that would get us
Then
down
it
about
goes up in the
6.9.
town and the village pays for it, right? Like it's, you're moving numbers that
Yeah, but
we're gonna, you and I are gonna pay that
I
anyway.
understand, but I'm talking about how it looks to
Mhm.
the taxpayer. And the town is going up, what, 6%?
The town, as of last Wednesday, was 6%.
6%.
And we're
Where's-
Right now, you're 7.1.
7.1.
So I'd rather be in that same range for the visual.
I mean, it doesn't
It
mean
doesn't-
anything when it comes to like the taxes that we pay, but if it makes people feel better.
No, I'm talking about,
I know the optics.
I'm talking about the optics.
I know the optics are important to some degree, but I mean, it's negligible. Come on, it's
I mean, I also know that we have like,
But if we can't, but if it's just gonna be accurate to get $3,000 instead of, you know, from the highway, let's do it.
Yeah, but
If it doesn't affect anything other than the optics, it does affect the optics.
so. And Eric and I spoke earlier today because I posed some questions and basically this conversation that's being had right now. And we're just maintaining the status quo. And the question is that, and Eric posed this question at the last meeting, is if we want to move things forward, right? I get, I'm gonna have to pay more too, so you know, it doesn't benefit me either. But at some point, we have to start, you know, just like we did last year and made the tough decision to put some money aside for contingency. That was a good thing to do. And we should look at some of these other things that Eric had posed at the last meeting. I don't know all of them offhand, but, and one of them was another person to work in the department and do some things. But those are the kinds of things that'll move us forward and allow us to do more things in the future. So we're being very short-sighted, considering some of those other things. And
For instance, buying the short-term rental thing. And in the hopes that it won't show up now, but it will lead to an increase in monies. That will help a future budget. Not
Yes,
this-
it
Not this.
will, but the question is,
So,
where do we
so
have more
if
things like
it's more
that?
accurate, if the town actually is only spending 46 instead of 49 approximately on a village highway, let's just be accurate.
well, I mean, I think there's something about
And
like,
then there's
let's,
just an optics to it. And but the optics are important. People are feeling the complaints about the tax rate are enormous, but people are freaking out over things out of our control. The state education tax proposed increase is huge. You know, governor's gonna veto it, but it's still gonna be huge, whatever they end up with.
You know,
And all of that is just how it's depressing to a lot of people. There's just a lot of talk going on about it. So if this is a tiny thing that I'm suggesting we do, that is based on a real possibility that Eric finds out that, oh, yeah, it was only 46, not 49, why not do it and have 6.9%?
well, yeah, I mean, if it's a real thing.
If it's a real thing, no,
Yeah,
I'm saying
yeah,
it's a real thing.
Okay. Okay, I mean, yeah, if he finds out that it is
If you-
correct, then let's do it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, 'cause it's written down, but I don't want to cut something for the sake of,
No,
Getting
I'm
a prettier
saying,
number.
I'm saying if it's a real thing.
Okay. well, Eric has his marching orders. Go find the real number, Eric.
I have a question, Eric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'm stupid, but It's 1,000,005 divided by the 1,000,004 is, I get 5.5%. Am I doing the math wrong or something, or is there some factor that's mixed in there?
Say again, sorry?
I just taken the, what's on the bottom of your expenses. 1,546 and so forth,
Yeah,
divided by last year's 1,464. Arithmetic is 1.0557. To me, it's 5.5%, not 7%.
so that's well, you're looking at the total increase in expenses.
Expenses, yeah,
That's different than what the increase in the tax rate's gonna be,
actually, right.
because,
Yeah, the grand list thing.
yeah, because you're, again, the tax rate's so low that, a 5% increase on $1.4 million, if your tax rate's only $600,000, has to go up more than 5% to make up that difference.
Right.
So there's like two numbers, is that what the increase in expenses, increase in overall revenue, then also what the tax rate needs to be to kind of balance it. Why it's gonna be different.
Taxes and additional revenue.
Yeah, yeah.
I just have a silly little one. The rubbish removal for $2,500.
So what's hard?
The rubbish removal,
Yep.
is that split between the fire department and the police department?
What line are you looking under?
I don't have numbers. It's the last page, right here. Where my red is. Is that just for the police department, or is that the police and fire?
I'll confirm, I believe that's just the police.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know, I can look into that, 'cause I don't know, it may be,
Split,
no, it may be certain things that, can't be just thrown away,
okay,
whether it's evidence or
Okay.
documentation or
Yep,
something,
that makes
or
sense.
old cases,
Yep.
something like that, yeah.
okay. Well, it's not a lot, but I was just curious about that.
I will say, I don't know how many of you look at the revenue projection tab or sheet. Just a point of reference. Additionally, I like to under project revenue to give yourself cushion and then give more revenue rate. Almost all the revenue for the village is projected at 3-year average, which means, again, it's not a lot of wiggle room. If something goes wrong, you don't have that ability to say, it's okay that the parking meters died for 3 weeks in the summer, we're getting revenue, that's gonna drastically impact the overall budget. So I just wanna make that clear. I've increased donor permits, substantially, based on the changing in zoning fees and what we know is coming down the pipeline or projected to come down the pipeline. And, but that just, those things, again, that you can't confirm that a project that's starting out today is actually gonna go through with it and pay the fees, or that something will happen in the world and construction will slow down or something, or home repairs will slow down. So I just want to make clear that at a certain point, 1% tax increase or a 6%, we're pretty well up against it with other revenue. There's not a lot of, we're going based on historic performance. Again, love to be wrong, and these revenue numbers are under. And again, just this is including a 3% increase on the town side, which again has not been agreed upon, talked about as well. So that's also in there. So if something changes, that also is a conversation we'll have to have as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for all the explanations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice that you have it right like this.
Appreciate that you are able to answer us right sitting here. Then I'll get back to.
Well, some of
Other
it,
than other than that one thing we
Yeah.
want you to get
Yeah.
back to.
Very impressive.
So what's our next, so the only outstanding thing we have is the
so I think the big thing is
3,000 and,
tomorrow the town's going to do the same thing.
Okay.
So I think if the town makes any decisions that will impact the village budget based on allocations, we'll have to come back and discuss that. If not, I'll do some research into some things, and then by what's that? Wednesday or Thursday, I can send updated budgets, with the new numbers of where we're at and kind of go from there.
Okay.
If the trustees think they want another meeting, to discuss increase in tax rate, decrease tax rate, doing something different, then we have that meeting. If everyone's ready, we can, for on that note, so.
I mean, can we kind of target a calendar right now?
I don't know if we need another meeting
No,
yet.
no. Not
Well,
yet,
yeah,
not until
well, I
we-
just meant if we are gonna need one, maybe we should.
So we have a meeting next
Yeah, we have a-
Tuesday,
Yeah.
so we can always throw
Regular.
on a budget update as one of the discussion points, and if we
Right.
discuss anything.
Yeah.
And it could just be, do we want another meeting, or do we not want another meeting, or do we want to vote, or do we want to do X, Y, and Z?
Right.
And go from there.
Right. And, so when you're doing the select board tomorrow, and they're talking about allocations, remind them that, because sometimes some of the select board members, I think, forget that you live in the village, you're paying both.
Mhm.
You're part of the town, paying the town.
Yeah.
Well, it's the village. I think that's forgotten.
Yeah.
As far as the short-term rental thing goes, I'm wondering if you shouldn't take a look at, do a comparison as to what the revenue income is for permits and whatnot for the short-term rentals. And I'm thinking that you could just take a look at the sites and be able to then compare it to the conditional use permits
Mhm.
as to who is actually signed up and who isn't.
Mhm.
And I mean, because $28,000 just a lot of money, I think. But,
Well, it's.
and then what are the
it's-
fees
it's
gonna be?
No, it's,
It-
10, right?
And for the village, it's about 10, yeah, 10, 12. isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, but I just think it's a lot of
That's
money.
28.
Yeah, yeah.
We're paying.
Yeah,
But
28,000.
once it gets closer and they still need, it's possible we won't get it because the planning commission still needs to present it,
But that's just for the village, is that right?
the 10.
But
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
the
right,
total.
of the 28, yeah.
right, yeah,
And that is,
but still, that's a lot of money.
Aquila Planning Zone kind of the top end one that they talk to, and we're trying to be conservative again, so it could be under, but we want to make sure we have the money there if need be.
I mean, I kind of know some people that are flying under the radar. I think other people know those people.
Yes, but you won't be the one who comes out publicly and.
You want to name names right now,
Yeah.
Brenda?
So I think the software allows us to quickly get all that information and then determine, track how we're gonna deal with them rather than. So I heard from someone that this place is an Airbnb or a short-term rental, and then we have to then go and kind of prove it. So my understanding is a lot of times we'll go to the knock on the door and they'll say, oh, we don't do that anymore. And my family was up here and we were gone, and that's why you saw the cars here, and how are you gonna prove otherwise, where the software in theory can say, here's it posted yesterday, you posted it every single day for the last year and a half. Clearly, you've been doing, so I think that's
And
kind
it
of,
scours their calendars too.
but
Anyway, is there any other business to come before the trustees tonight? Anyone online? No? Okay, in that case, I would make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I didn't even
Anybody
try a
next
second.
Tuesday?
Handle the numbers.
I think there's one person here in town that